Talk about the hunter hack. The purpose of the hunter hack is to give horses an opportunity to show their expertise over low fences and on the flat. It's a stepping stone class. It's a stepping stone class for riders that maybe need to learn to jump, younger horses that or horses that have not jumped, to give them an opportunity to start to have some experience over fences. It's a minimum of 70% over fences, and that, you know, and 30% on the flat. You do not have to, you can use, you know, the way I judge the hunter hack is, and Jerry and I talked about that this morning, we have a hunter hack score sheet up here on the board, enlarged. Let me just get through this part. 70 minimum, which means you can be more than 70, on style over fences, even hunting pace, flat work, manners, and way of going. Faults in each phase mirror the working hunter and the hunter under saddle. So what we just talked about for hunter under saddle, you're going to be looking for on the rail. The pushing up, going forward at all three gaits, gaits that match, pleasant, bright expression. They're required to jump 2 fences at 2'3" to 3 foot, depending on the class. Show management has the option now to allow a 3rd fence, except in rookie. So in the rookie classes, it should only be 2. Everywhere else, they have the option of 3. That's totally up to management. So our score sheet reflects that 3rd jump now. If you want to look in the rule book, it's on page 241. Talks about the class routine in a little more detail. But when I judge, and I'm not wired up, but I mean, I'm on wireless. So when I judge this, you know, I write the number, I judge the whole thing and give it a score. Just all 2 to 3 jumps and give it a score. I might make notes about the way it goes, give it a score and any comments, and then you can come over here and you put them on your stagger. And then when I go to the rail, I have groups. I tend to do hunter hack in 5-point increments and sort of have group, you know, I might have a couple 80s, 85, 70, 65, and then if I need to go in between, I do. So you see where it's 89 to 92, 86 to 88. Use that to help you get organized. And then when you do the rail, I do them on groups. And I don't generally move them much. Jerry and I talked about this. I don't move them around much on the rail unless something terrible happens, like one blows a lead or it comes undone or it runs, you know, any of the things that can happen on the flat for it to move out of its group. What I normally do is use, if I have 3 80s, I use the flat to say, well, these 3 all jumped similarly, which one, and then use the rail work to sort them out. Is that what you do?
And yes, in regards to the flat portion, I agree, I do that very similar. I've scored the jump portion a little bit differently, and I actually gave it a numerical score. So if there were 2 jumps, if the class involved 2 jumps, 70%, I'd let each jump be worth 35 points, and then I'd use something like 25, 27 as my average. So like if I had a horse that in my opinion was average, jump the next jump much better, that'd be a 55. So I guess if now that it's changed to where it's from 1 to 100, I'm going to have to adjust that, you know, and then move up to where I can score it a little differently. But that's what I've done. And then when I have, let's say, 3 jumps, and so if it's from 0 to 100, I can do like 35 per jump. So then let's say I'd have a 30, 30, 25. I didn't like his last jump as well. So now I've got an 85 for that particular horse. Then, of course, you still use your ladder sheet. Then when you go to the rail, as she said, she's got her groupings, which I would have. They could move within their grouping, very difficult to jump out of that grouping completely. They would have to almost jump out of the arena to have a dramatic change. That's just the way that it's worked for myself. It works, everybody comes up with their own system.
And I think it's important to remember that this is a jumping class. I think sometimes horses that are exceptionally good movers, but maybe aren't as exceptional over the jumps. Sometimes, what I call a fooler, you know, they get, people want to use them because they're so good on the rail, but you got to remember where they, just because maybe if they're in your third group on the rail and they end up, third group after the jumps and they end up maybe in your 5th or 6th place slot, you're not going to move them up to first because they're a beautiful mover. They can be the, you know, if there's 3 in their group, then they can go to the top of that group. But you want to be sure that it's jumping style is the primary thing that you're judging. So.
And I'll repeat again, that's much of the information you get from us, the stuff involving the rule book, of course, is concrete. Some of the other information is our opinions only. In the hunter hack class, I'm much harder on those horses that rub a rail. Holy smokes, 2-3. They should be able to step over 2-3. In the senior and amateur, it can be as much as 3 foot. And I perhaps can be a little forgiving for a very light tick, but if there's 2 jumps and you rub one of them, you've just rubbed 50% of your course. Where in your hunter round, you have 8 or 9 jumps and you rub a fence. Well, I'm fairly forgiving for it, and I'm even forgiving for the second one. Gets beyond that, then I think there's something I'm not seeing, but that horse is telling me that he isn't using those legs very good. In the hunter hack, I'm harder than some people are on a rub. I'm also a touch harder on manners in this class because we have so little to judge on, so little to base it on. So the horse that really, really looks like you're out in a field, you're cantering across the field, there just happens to be 2 little jumps in your way, and in stride, he meets them, nothing changes, he goes down. The horse that can give you that appearance, boy, I just give him tons of credit. And as she mentioned earlier, this is our beginning, our introductory to the over fence stuff. So this is where a lot of our under saddle kids who say, I'd like to try to jump, you know, I'm kind of afraid of it. Well, we give them this easy little 2 and or 3 jump test, but we want those safe, good old horses for them. So I place a little more emphasis on the manners, let's say, in this class than I do the actual whole course class.
Yes, I agree completely. The less jumps there are, the less opportunity for things to go wrong. Therefore, smaller mistakes become bigger and more amplified and in your scoring. And especially at the height, at 2.3 or 2.6, if they cannot, like he said, you know, swapping becomes a huge deal, adding becomes a huge deal. They're big deals generally, but they're even bigger, and you're going to be harder on them in this class because there's just only 2 to 3 jumps. And the jumps are not huge, so they need to be able to just in a mannerly fashion, as he said, go around and jump their 2 jumps and walk, track, canter on the rail. They've got to be able to do two jobs well. So, so are there any? Karen, is anything? Anybody?
We're caught up. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now we're gonna do. We're gonna watch a couple of trips. This is from the finals at the Youth World. At some point, there's 3 jumps. So they're gonna come to the start cone marker, pick up their right lead, canter down over a single jump, canter past the in gate, canter up across a bending line, and then come back down and stop and back. A couple of things I noticed, I don't mind the stopping and backing. I don't love it when people stop back and fling the reins at the horse to show how broke it is and that it doesn't move. Just relax. They should just relax the reins and then walk off quietly. That's a thing for me. I don't like flinging reins.
Pretty much that cone at the stop area, it's not like some of our other pattern classes that have to be so precise. It's just a general location. So by that I mean if they stop a horse length prior to that cone, I'm not going to kill him if it's a proper halt, if the horse responsively gave his face and stopped and stood. That's not a big deal. They do not have to be like where their left leg is right next to the cone.
Yes.
We're not looking for that. But then on the back also, they just have to show that this horse is willing to give his jaw. Doesn't have to go running backwards, but the resistance, and it's got to be significant resistance for you to make a big notation, but you want him to stop readily. If that rider started to request the stop a horse length prior and they couldn't accomplish it until they were like 3 horse lengths past the cone, fairly significant there, you know. But if he dribbles to a trot for a step down to the walk and then stops, as long as the horse readily did it, same thing with the back, as long as he readily does it, then I don't care if it's that sharp, precise thing that we will see in some of the other events.
Mm-hmm. The sliding stop. We do not want a sliding stop.
We have 3 examples here of a hunter hack trip, and I think y'all are sharp enough to pick up the one that we didn't like on his halt and back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so y'all can start the video. There's 3 examples. So this one politely walks in, beautifully turned out. Nice departure. It was cute. Nice, polite lead change. So then she's going to turn and come up this bending. Should be a 7, I believe. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. Maybe a little reachy, but not terrible. I mean, from the angle where we are, possibly a little reachy, but not a miss. A little flattened out. Not a nice halt. Fine back. You know, politely drops her reins and leaves. Anything else to add? Nope. Jerry agrees 100% with me. So then we have this gray horse. It's fine. Maybe not quite as quality as the other horse, but cute. I like it fine. It appears mannerly. So watch its front end over this first jump. So it's deep, and to me it was not very good with its front end. It wasn't dangerous, but it was not, she was a little deep and it just kind of shelved its legs is what I call that. So I'm gonna be a little hard on that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, it's just an average jumper to me. Jerry, do you have anything to add?
Oh, clearly.
Yeah.
The first jump that you comment on was clearly a below average quality jump. The other 2 were average.
Yep. Pulled down a little in the halt, but not, you know, I thought its halt was fine. It was sort of the other horse wanted to be a little above not offensively. This one was a little bit heavy, so neither one was ideal, but neither one was horrific. So this is a very pretty horse. It's a great hunter typey look. And to me, it just is a little average in its legs, a little bit, I call it plain-legged is the best, you know, the height of the jump doesn't make it do much. So, it's just stepping over the jumps. But it's a pretty, and then there's got a little past it there, probably a little deep, in order to make them match. And then here, there's a lot of resistance. It wants to go above it, wants to go below it, in its halt. And then better when it backs, right? Yes. So that one, I think the style didn't quite match the overall picture in terms of its front, just what I would call a little bit plain-legged. But maybe that horse will jump the bigger jumps better, but we don't know. We're judging what's in front of us on this day. So to me, it would go 1, 3, 2, just because the one rolled over its front end at jump 1. I mean, then you don't see them on the rail, so then that may influence. But if I were going to rank them, I'd probably have an 80, a 70 to 75, and then a 60 to 65 would be where I would put them. I mean, that first horse was not a 95, but it was definitely the
But
most
he's
consistent.
clearly 5 or more points
ahead.
above the other
Yes.
one. Yes. A comment that I haven't had asked of me recently, but years ago, when some of our all-around judges were requesting assistance with this, like these horses all started off, especially the first horse, the one that we liked the best, his head was pretty high, and some of our all-around judges wouldn't like it. And my comment to them would be, he had his head carriage where it was. It stayed there the whole time. There was no resistance. They have a portion called the flat portion. So if you want to discuss their headset, you wait to the flat portion. Now, if he was rude about his face as he's approaching jump 1, then of course you take that into account. But where they put their head and neck as they're approaching them doesn't matter to me, as long as they use them properly as they're going over the jump, and then they go back to that position. Then, as I said, there's a flat portion. So if you want to start judging them as far as their head carriage, that's where you get to do it.
And it's, for me, a high head sometimes, especially in a youth or an amateur class, and that I wouldn't call that. I don't like it to look like a giraffe, but a horse who carries his head and neck up is helpful sometimes to an amateur or a youth that needs some help balancing. You don't want a horse dragging somebody down to the jump, with their head, because the horse has to push and go this way, so they're changing their natural, the 60-40 balance has got to come up. So that's actually not necessarily a bad thing. Medium is better, but that one, and she had a straight line from its bit to her elbow. It was
very good.
Yeah, it was clearly a partnership that was working, and it was a cute typey horse so it wouldn't bother me. I'm more concerned about how it gets across the jumps, personally.
Mm-hmm. Clearly, and none of these 3 were offensive. All
No,
3
they're
were
all good
actually
horses.
very
Don't
good.
get me wrong. So if this is one of yours out there, there's nothing wrong. We're splitting hairs here. All 3 of these were clearly. I think this was the final, so they're clearly, are very nice horses. We're being picky. So, Karen, any questions?
Oh, yes, just one came just in. How do you judge the Kimberwick bits when used in this class?
I note it. For me, I don't love it. It's for in the USCF world, we would call that non-traditional tack for us. It is clearly legal. I mean, it's legal. I don't love it, but it's legal. For me, I note it. And anytime there's Pelhams, Kimberwicks, I note it on my card and circle it because it'll help me remember that horse. If that horse goes around in that bit well, I'm not going to fault them. If they run around with their mouth open and a kid's water skiing on its face, and that's clearly why it's got a Kimberwick on, it's going to take away. I mean, the performance is going to reflect that. Therefore, the score. You can't out. They're not out, but I definitely note it. And if that horse goes great in that bit, I'm not going to mess with it. If it doesn't go great in that bit, it's because it didn't go great, to me. So, Jerry. Okay, Jerry.
Well, clearly the performance. If it's a legal bit, then whether I like it or not,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a legal bit, and her comment about the performance is what's going to happen. If they've got that extra bit with the chain on it, because they need it for control, well, that's going to show up, and
Yeah.
that's going to be
So-
reflected in your score. So
I do note it just for my own.
I
Just
guess I take
helps me.
notice of it too, but it's not an issue. You have another?
Yeah, and then there was several requests actually for your scores for those runs.
They may be on a delay, but we said the first one 80, second one 70 to 75. So that would be the number one, the bay horse would have gotten an 80 from us. The number 3 horse, which was the chestnut horse that went third, would have gotten a 70 to 75, and the gray horse 60 to 65.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think they were wanting the jump scores.
That's what they were.
For you? Oh,
That's what the
Oh.
jump scores would have been.
like totaled up.
Or did they want me to do it the way I do it, or?
That's what I see, one question.
Like per.
What would your scores be for these trips? Could Jerry explain what score he gave to each jump to
Jump,
come
that's
up with
you
his
did,
final
so
So
score?
he read it the same way. Well, we'll see if my memory's any good.
Do you want to watch them again? You can watch
I
'em.
guess. Oops.
Can y'all back it up?
Well.
We'll just use it below. So here's number 1. So yours.
And again, remember, this is strictly. Oops. Now I have to watch them over
I know.
here.
This is Jerry's opinion.
So this is actually going to be scored, and we have to be able to adapt. So I exposed
converted you.
myself earlier
I'm converting you.
that I had my system worked on 1 to 70. Now they would like it to be 1 to 100. So I'm going to give like 33 as a perfect score for each jump, and with an average being, let's say, 27. So I can already tell you, now that I'm watching this again, my score is probably going to be a touch higher than hers. So horse 1 will be up here. It's all, that may seem like an extremely high score, however, that is not like your hunter round. A hunter round, a 91, a 90 would be an incredibly high score. This is based on, I'm giving each jump a numerical value, and then I'm adding it up, and that's how I come up with that
Yeah.
for that horse.
The only thing in that system that, for me, and one reason I don't do it that way, is it doesn't allow, I guess unless you roll it into the last jump, how their back is. So if they say they have a great last jump and then the horse is terrible at the back, are you gonna kill them on? I mean, so to me, so in my little pea brain, when I'm doing it that way, I can account for all parts of the test, which the back is a part of the test. So either way, as long as you can account for all those things and it gets you in the right order, is what you're after. So,
Continue.
yep.
We've got some catching up to do here.
Well, did they want all 3 horses or just that first horse?
My understanding is that explained it. We'll ask them to send more comments and more. Also, a question about the format of the format of the score sheet, the current score sheet, and scoring each jump. Where do you put the numerical deduction for, say, adding a stride?
Oh, well, clearly.
It would be on the jump after it would be jump 3, right?
Here's our, they did 7 steps. If a horse did 8, I'd write 8 in there, and I'd take it off of this third jump.
Because that third jump is probably going to be ugly
Yeah.
if they.
So if I have an 8 in here, that third jump, I'm going to take it off. That one's gonna drop all the way to like a 20 or something. So I loved him here and here, and then I hated this portion. So that's gonna drop, if 27's my average, he's well below that by adding that step. So it's gonna be a 17, 18, 19, 20, something like that. So this whole score will drop down to like a high 60.
Perfect. And one more question. Will you address the sweat on the third horse? Did you think it was excessive, and how did you feel about that?
Oh, we talked about that a little yesterday. I did notice it. I mean, it is August in Oklahoma City, so, you know, I'd rather, if I have to pick one sweating or not sweating, I'd rather them sweat. It is a sign, you kind of think, wow, that one's been going a while.
So
Like,
Doug, would you fast forward to this third horse, please?
I don't know that it would take away from my score. I noticed it. I'm not going to lie. I noticed it. So,
So without intending to blow you off, how's that sound? I'm wanting to judge these 3 jumps, and I'm wanting to judge this horse on his flat work. Yes, he's a little sweaty. I'll agree with her. It's August in Oklahoma City.
so I've been there.
I don't think
It's
wearing
115 degrees.
I don't think wearing a Kimberwick bridle or wearing a Pelham should have any bearing on it, and this horse does not look abused.
No.
He doesn't look like he's been ridden totally into the ground, and so the fact that he's got a little sweat on him doesn't bother me,
Yeah.
because I'm here to look at those 3 jumps and to watch him on the
Yeah.
flat. So I think you're a little too nitpicky if you're concerned about this. So I wanted to see it again because I noticed he glistened the first time, but
Yeah.
I-
I mean, it's
doesn't-
certainly, I think as a judge, you're supposed to be paying attention. So if you don't notice that, but like I think Jerry said it beautifully, he doesn't look overridden. He looks bright. He looks perky. If he had come in with his head between his knees, breathing really hard and labored, but otherwise, it is August in Oklahoma City. I've been there. It's 115
That's-
degrees. I mean, it can be, and it's a chestnut horse, so they're shiny. I mean, I think, you know,
Yeah, so I
note it,
don't-
yes. Kill it, no. That make sense? Okay. Anything else?
This is one of the classes we discussed, level 1 in the youth and the amateur earlier, where some of their rules where you can place some horses, not place others, are a touch inconsistent. In the hunter hack, you are allowed to DQ a horse if you feel it's consistently behind the bridle and shows intimidation. This is one of those rules. It's page 242, rule 627. In a level 1 class, you do not disqualify them. If you think it's severe enough that this warrants a disqualification, in the regular youth, amateur, and open divisions, you can disqualify a horse for that reason. In level 1, you do not, but you do place them below,
Yes.
at the bottom, below everybody else.
So that goes with equitation on the flat, hunter hack.
Similar, Eck on the flat, you know, those level 1 riders, and we'll get to it later, but they can even knock over a cone and still place. This one just addresses
The
the headset.
heads. So.
You'll notice how
So
often
if
we've
it-
talked about the rule book.
I know, if it stops twice, I think you, because it doesn't address that. I think if you have a horse that comes in and stops twice, they're out. To me, the level 1 the level 1 difference applies to the flat portion. To me.
Correct, only the
Only
flat
the flat
portion.
portion. So
If
if
he-
they stop twice or they, you know, circle too many times or whatever, then they're
They're
out.
a
They shouldn't
DQ.
they should get disqualified and not make it back to the flat. Then if you get one on the flat that you do feel like is intimidated or trapped or overdone, you can it down to the bottom of your placings if you have enough to warrant that. You know, if you have 7 it's gonna be last, it's gonna be 7th. Any others, Karen?
Yeah, there was a clarification. They did want the per fence scores, but I think,
You wanna do?
We showed them on the
yeah,
one.
Yep.
I think there's just a lag here, so I think we're good.
Okay. All right, so now we're running ahead, which is fantastic. So we're going to press on and do the pleasure driving and then maybe do all the jumping after lunch.
All right.
Good? Okay, so now we're gonna go to,
Oh, wait, we
Oh.
I'm sorry.
that's okay, go
Um,
ahead, we got time.
The question is, since this is a broken line, do we have 7, it must be 7 or 8 strides? Or how do
Well,
you
to
define
me, no,
that?
because it says 96 feet on this, as they see on the PowerPoint. If a course designer puts a footage on there, 96 feet is 7. So they're expecting you to
Perfect.
do 7. So if they do 8, it's an ad, and then you're gonna account for that. If they do 6, they're too fast. So you're gonna count, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be talking to you people. You're gonna account for that. If it did not have a number on there, then you have more leeway, but because there's a number. So if you're at a weekend show, you might suggest that they don't put a number on there and give yourself some leeway. But this is clearly one at the highest level, so they're expecting a certain level of performance.
You know, and the judge has to use their discretion. These riders, these 3 examples that we had, they jumped in and stayed on kind of an inside track to the Oxer. If you had somebody that for whatever reason chose to make their bend a little bit bigger and go to the outside track and they put in a proper 8, that's your discretion at the time. I'm in agreement with her. A set number of feet was put here, so
Yeah,
I think
if
they
it's-
wanted
If it
7.
calls for a number, they need to, if you have 4 is one thing. If you have 104, that's gonna be a bigger deal.